There is a moment that arrives quietly, usually somewhere in the mid-60s, when the body begins to respond differently than it once did. You might notice it first in the morning, a stiffness that takes longer to fade, a sense that last night's sleep was somehow less restoring than it used to be. Or perhaps you notice it in the evening, when the glass of water you've always drunk before bed now seems to guarantee a 2 a.m. awakening, followed by that frustrating period of lying awake while the clock ticks slowly toward morning. What you might not realize is that these two observations, the restless nights and the slower mornings, are connected. And the connection runs through something so simple, so ordinary, that most people never think to question it. It involves what you consume in the hours before sleep. And more specifically, why the body after 60 processes those evening choices differently than it once did. The prevailing assumption has always been that hydration is hydration, that water is water. And drinking it before bed is either good because it keeps you hydrated, or bad because it makes you wake up. But this framing misses something essential. The question is not whether to drink in the evening. The question is what to drink, and why certain choices work with the aging body while others work against it. This is not about complicated protocols or expensive supplements. It is about understanding a simple principle. After 60, the body needs different support in the evening than it did at 40. And when you understand that principle, the small choice of what to drink before bed becomes something more. It becomes a way of working with your body rather than against it, of supporting the quiet restoration that determines how you feel when morning comes. You are listening to the Longevity Library, where we archive the wisdom of healthy aging, the architecture of longevity, how small evening choices shape the quality of your years. There is a moment in the late evening that passes almost without notice, yet it may influence the quality of your rest, the clarity of your thinking tomorrow, and the resilience of your body over time. It is the moment you choose what to consume in the hours before sleep. For much of your life, this choice carried little consequence. A glass of water, a cup of tea, perhaps nothing at all. Your body managed these inputs without complaint and delivered reliable sleep regardless. But as the decades accumulate, the relationship between what you drink and how you rest transforms in ways that deserve thoughtful attention. This is not a story about fixing what is broken. It is an exploration of how small adjustments, made with understanding rather than effort, can support the body's natural inclination toward restoration. The goal is not to achieve perfect sleep or to eliminate every nighttime awakening. The goal is to understand the principles that govern rest in later years and to work with them gently, consistently, and without expectation of dramatic transformation. What follows is an examination of the evening hours, what happens in the body as darkness falls, why certain beverages support rest while others undermine it, and how the seemingly small decision of what to drink before bed connects to broader patterns of healthy aging. The insights come not from any single source, but from decades of observation, from traditional practices that predate modern sleep science, and from research that continues to clarify how the aging body responds to the simple act of drinking. The changing landscape of the aging body at night. To understand why evening choices matter more after 60, it helps first to understand what changes in the body as the years pass. These changes are not failures or signs of decline. They are adaptations, the body's way of continuing to function despite the accumulated wear of decades. And like all adaptations, they come with trade-offs that can be managed through awareness. The most relevant change for evening hydration involves the hormone system that regulates fluid balance. Throughout your life, a hormone called vasopressin, also known as antidiuretic hormone, has quietly managed your kidney function while you sleep. Released by the pituitary gland as darkness falls, vasopressin signals the kidneys to reduce urine production during the night. This is why you could once sleep through until morning without waking to use the bathroom. even if you had consumed fluids in the evening. The hormone held your body in a state of relative dryness, concentrating urine and allowing uninterrupted rest. After 60, vasopressin production declines. The signal to the kidneys weakens. Urine continues to be produced throughout the night, filling the bladder at a rate that once would have been reserved for daytime hours. Simultaneously, the bladder itself undergoes changes. The muscles that form the bladder wall become less elastic. The nerves that sense bladder fullness become more sensitive, sending urgent signals when the bladder is only partially filled. Where once you might have slept through a moderate level of bladder distension, now even modest filling can trigger awakening. These two changes, reduced vasopressin and increased bladder sensitivity, combine to make evening hydration a more complicated matter than it once was. The same glass of water that passed unnoticed at 50 becomes a reliable source of nighttime awakening at 65. This is not a sign that something has gone wrong. It is simply the body operating under a different set of rules than it once did. Alongside these changes in fluid regulation, the architecture of sleep itself transforms with age. Sleep is not a single state, but a cycling through stages: light sleep, deep sleep, and dream sleep that repeats several times each night. Deep sleep, also called slow-wave sleep, is the stage during which physical restoration occurs. Tissues are repaired. Waste products are cleared from the brain. Hormones that support immune function and cellular maintenance are released. In youth, deep sleep occupies a substantial portion of the night. By late middle age, it has diminished significantly. By the mid-60s, deep sleep may occupy only a fraction of the time it once did. This reduction in deep sleep means that when something does wake you, a full bladder, a muscle cramp, a noise from outside, you are more likely to awaken fully and less likely to slip back into restorative sleep. The sleep that remains is lighter, more easily disturbed, and less effective at producing the feeling of refreshment come morning. The nervous system also changes in ways that affect sleep. The balance between the sympathetic nervous system, responsible for alertness and stress response, and the parasympathetic nervous system, responsible for rest and digestion, shifts with age. For many older adults, sympathetic tone remains higher than it should during the evening, keeping the brain in a state of subtle alertness even when the body is tired. Cortisol, the primary hormone of the stress response, may remain elevated into the night, suppressing the melatonin that would otherwise facilitate sleep onset and maintenance. These are not problems to be solved, but conditions to be accommodated. The body after 60 has different needs than the body at 40. The choices that once supported health may now work against it. Not because they are bad choices, but because the context in which they operate has changed. The evening beverage is a perfect example. Plain water remains essential for health, but its timing and form may need adjustment to work with rather than against the aging body's new priorities. The unexpected effects of plain water in the evening. Water is life. No one would suggest otherwise. The human body depends on adequate hydration for every system to function: circulation, digestion, temperature regulation, cognitive performance, joint lubrication. Dehydration in older adults is a serious concern, associated with confusion, falls, urinary tract infections, and a host of other complications. The message to drink enough water throughout the day is sound and important. But the evening presents a special case. When you drink plain water in the hours before bed, it follows a predictable path through the body. It is absorbed from the stomach and intestines into the bloodstream. It travels to the kidneys, where it is filtered and processed into urine. It fills the bladder, and eventually, it triggers the sensation that wakes you from sleep. This process happens more quickly with plain water than with fluids that contain other components. Water alone is absorbed rapidly, reaches the kidneys quickly, and produces urine efficiently. There is nothing in plain water that slows this process or redirects fluid into other tissues. It is, from the perspective of the kidneys, a straightforward challenge to be processed and eliminated. In a younger body, the antidiuretic hormone would counter this by reducing urine production during sleep. The water you drank would be held in the body, its elimination postponed until morning. But with vasopressin levels reduced, that holding pattern no longer operates as effectively. The kidneys continue producing urine. The bladder continues filling. And at 2 or 3 in the morning, you wake. The frustration of this pattern is compounded by the fact that plain water offers nothing to actively support sleep. It contains no compounds that calm the nervous system. It provides no raw materials for the production of sleep-related neurotransmitters. It does not warm the body or signal to the brain that rest is approaching. It simply hydrates, and then it leaves. This is not an argument against hydration. It is an observation that plain water, consumed in the evening by an older adult, often produces outcomes that work against the goal of uninterrupted rest. The solution is not to stop drinking in the evening. Complete fluid restriction before bed carries its own risks and rarely works as a long-term strategy anyway. The solution is to consider what else might be consumed instead. Fluids that provide hydration while also supporting the specific needs of the aging body at night. Fluids that work with the body's evening priorities. When you consume a beverage that contains more than just water, the body's response changes. Nutrients and compounds in the fluid alter how it is absorbed, where it is distributed, and how it affects the nervous system. Some beverages actually help the body retain fluid in tissues rather than sending it directly to the bladder. Others provide the raw materials the brain needs to shift from wakefulness to sleep. Still others calm the stress response that keeps so many older adults in a state of subtle alertness through the night. Understanding which beverages do what and why allows for choices that align with the body's evening priorities rather than working against them. The role of minerals in nighttime stability. Among the most overlooked factors in sleep quality is the balance of minerals in the body. Electrolytes, primarily potassium, magnesium, and sodium, must remain in careful proportion for nerves to signal properly and muscles to relax fully. Even minor imbalances can produce symptoms that disrupt sleep. Low potassium, for example, has been associated with increased nighttime urination. A study published in sleep research literature found that older adults with lower blood potassium levels experienced significantly more nighttime awakenings to urinate than those with balanced electrolytes, when potassium levels were restored through dietary sources. Sleep continuity improved measurably within a week. Magnesium plays an equally important role. This mineral helps regulate the GABA system, the primary inhibitory neurotransmitter network in the brain. When magnesium is adequate, GABA functions more effectively, calming neuronal activity and facilitating the shift into sleep. Magnesium also helps relax skeletal muscles, reducing the physical tension that can keep the body wired even when the mind is tired. Magnesium deficiency, common in older adults due to reduced dietary intake and decreased absorption, has been linked to insomnia, restless legs, and muscle cramps, all of which interrupt sleep. Sodium, often vilified in discussions of health, also plays a role in nighttime stability. In appropriate amounts, sodium helps the body retain fluid in the vascular system rather than sending it to the bladder. This is why very low sodium diets can sometimes increase nighttime urination. The body cannot hold onto the fluid it receives and must eliminate it more quickly. Beverages that provide these minerals in balanced, absorbable forms can help stabilize the nervous system and reduce the physical irritants that trigger nighttime awakening. This is one reason why traditional sleep aids often included warm milk. Milk provides calcium and magnesium, or why coconut water has gained attention for its mineral content. These are not sedatives. They are nutrients that support the body's own regulatory systems, the nervous system and the calming compounds. While minerals support the physical infrastructure of the nervous system, other compounds act directly on brain chemistry to promote calm. These are not drugs. They are naturally occurring molecules that bind to receptors in the brain and enhance the activity of inhibitory neurotransmitters. Apigenin, found abundantly in chamomile, is one such compound. It binds to benzodiazepine receptors in the brain, the same receptors targeted by pharmaceutical anti-anxiety medications, but with a much gentler effect. When apigenin occupies these receptors, it enhances the activity of GABA, reducing neuronal excitability and promoting a state of calm. This is why chamomile tea has been used for centuries as a bedtime beverage, not because it forces sleep, but because it helps the brain settle into the state from which sleep can emerge naturally. Research on chamomile in older adults has shown measurable effects. In one study, women over 65 who drank chamomile tea each evening for 2 weeks fell asleep more quickly, woke less often during the night, and reported more satisfying sleep than those who drank no tea. The effects were modest but consistent, and they occurred without the side effects or dependency risks associated with pharmaceutical sleep aids. Curcumin, the active compound in turmeric, works through a different mechanism. It appears to regulate the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the feedback loop that controls cortisol production. By helping to normalize cortisol levels, curcumin can reduce the hyperarousal state that keeps so many older adults from achieving deep sleep. When combined with piperine from black pepper, which dramatically increases its absorption, curcumin becomes a more effective tool for supporting the body's stress response system. Glycine, an amino acid found in gelatin and bone broth, takes still another approach. It acts directly on the systems that govern the transition into sleep. Glycine has been shown to lower core body temperature slightly, which is one of the physiological signals that initiates sleep. It also appears to increase slow-wave brain activity, extending the time spent in the deepest, most restorative sleep stage, perhaps most importantly for older adults. Glycine has been associated with improved morning alertness, waking feeling clearer and more refreshed rather than groggy. These compounds share a common feature. They do not force sedation. They do not knock the nervous system unconscious the way sleeping pills do. Instead, they support the body's own sleep mechanisms, helping them function more effectively. The difference is crucial. Sedation is not sleep. Being rendered unconscious is not the same as passing through the natural sleep cycles that restore and repair. The goal is not to force the brain into inactivity, but to allow it to find its own way into rest. The temperature factor in the body's circadian signals, beyond what a beverage contains. Its temperature matters. The body uses temperature as a signal for sleep onset. Core body temperature normally drops in the evening, reaching its lowest point in the early morning hours. This drop is one of the signals that initiates and maintains sleep. Anything that interferes with it can delay sleep onset or reduce sleep quality. Hot beverages consumed too close to bedtime can temporarily raise core temperature, potentially delaying the natural temperature drop. Very cold beverages can trigger digestive responses that may also interfere with relaxation. Warm beverages, consumed at a temperature close to body temperature, neither raise nor lower core temperature significantly. They are neutral from a thermal perspective, allowing the body's natural temperature rhythm to proceed undisturbed. This is one reason why traditional bedtime beverages across cultures are almost always served warm. Warm milk, warm tea, warm broth. The warmth is not just about comfort. It is about signaling to the body that the active period of the day has ended and the rest period has begun. The ritual of preparing and consuming a warm beverage becomes a behavioral cue that complements the physiological cues the body is already receiving from the falling light and the passing hours. The volume question and bladder considerations. No discussion of evening beverages would be complete without addressing the volume question directly. The amount you drink in the evening matters as much as what you drink. A large volume of even the most sleep-supportive beverage will eventually fill the bladder and cause awakening. The goal is to consume enough to provide beneficial compounds without overwhelming the bladder's limited capacity. For most older adults, the appropriate evening beverage volume is between 100 and 150 milliliters, roughly half a standard cup. This is enough to dissolve and deliver beneficial compounds, but not so much that it guarantees a middle-of-the-night bathroom trip. Consuming this volume slowly, over 10 to 15 minutes, allows for gradual absorption and may reduce the peak bladder filling that occurs when fluid enters the stomach quickly. Timing also matters. Consuming the beverage 60 to 90 minutes before bedtime allows time for initial processing while ensuring that the bulk of fluid has moved through the system before you lie down. Following the beverage with a final trip to the bathroom ensures that you begin the sleep period with an empty bladder, maximizing the chances of uninterrupted rest. These are not rigid rules, but general guidelines. Some individuals will tolerate larger volumes or later consumption without awakening. Others will need to be more conservative. The key is observation and adjustment, paying attention to how your body responds and adapting accordingly. Traditional beverages and what they offer. Across cultures and throughout history, people have consumed specific beverages in the evening to support rest. These traditions developed without knowledge of neurotransmitters, hormones, or electrolyte balance. They emerged from observation. Certain drinks, consumed at certain times, seem to promote better sleep. Modern research has begun to clarify why these traditional practices worked, revealing the compounds and mechanisms behind them. Warm milk and its plant-based alternatives. The tradition of warm milk before bed spans centuries and continents. Mothers have offered it to children. Grandparents have sipped it themselves. The practice was so widespread that it became almost a cliché. Yet it persisted because it seemed to work for enough people to keep the tradition alive. Milk contains tryptophan, the amino acid that serves as a precursor to serotonin and ultimately melatonin. It contains calcium, which helps the brain use tryptophan effectively. It contains magnesium, which supports GABA function and muscle relaxation. The fat in milk slows absorption, providing a steady release of these compounds rather than a sudden spike. And the warmth provides the thermal and behavioral cues already discussed. For many older adults, however, dairy milk presents challenges. Lactose intolerance becomes more common with age as the enzyme that breaks down lactose declines. The result can be bloating, gas, and digestive discomfort, the opposite of what you want when trying to relax into sleep. For these individuals, plant-based alternatives offer similar benefits without the digestive burden. Unsweetened almond milk, for example, provides magnesium and small amounts of tryptophan without lactose. It is low in calories and does not spike blood sugar. The fat content, while lower than whole milk, is sufficient to slow absorption somewhat. Warm almond milk can serve the same ritual function as warm dairy milk while being more digestible for many older adults. Oat milk offers beta-glucans, which may have gentle blood sugar stabilizing effects, along with some minerals. Walnut milk provides omega-3 fatty acids and melatonin. Walnuts are one of the few plant sources of melatonin itself. The key is choosing unsweetened versions, as added sugars can spike blood glucose and potentially disrupt sleep through nighttime blood sugar fluctuations. Chamomile and the herbal tradition. Chamomile tea represents one of the most thoroughly documented traditional sleep aids. Used in Egyptian, Greek, and Roman medicine. It has been a staple of European herbalism for centuries. The modern research, as noted, has confirmed what traditional users observed. Chamomile promotes relaxation and supports sleep without causing dependency or morning grogginess. The apigenin in chamomile is the primary active compound, but chamomile contains dozens of other constituents that may contribute to its effects. Some have mild anti-inflammatory properties. Others may support digestion, reducing the discomfort that can interfere with sleep. The cumulative effect is a gentle shift toward calm that begins within 30 to 60 minutes of consumption. Chamomile is best prepared as a true tea, steeped for 5 to 7 minutes in water that has just been brought to a boil. Covering the cup while steeping prevents the volatile compounds from escaping with the steam. The resulting liquid should be sipped slowly, preferably without sweeteners that could affect blood sugar. Turmeric and the golden milk tradition. Golden milk, also called turmeric latte, has roots in Ayurvedic medicine, the traditional healing system of India. The combination of turmeric, warm milk, and often other spices like ginger and cinnamon was used not specifically for sleep, but for overall vitality and resistance to disease. Only recently have researchers begun to understand how this combination might specifically support rest. The curcumin in turmeric, as discussed, appears to regulate the stress response system. By helping to normalize cortisol, it may reduce the hyperarousal that keeps so many people from achieving deep sleep. The anti-inflammatory effects of curcumin may also contribute. Chronic low-grade inflammation is increasingly recognized as a disruptor of sleep, and reducing inflammatory load may allow for more restorative rest. The piperine in black pepper, essential for curcumin absorption, was not originally part of golden milk. The combination of turmeric and black pepper is more common in savory cooking than in sweet beverages. But the insight that black pepper dramatically increases curcumin bioavailability has led many to add a pinch to their golden milk, transforming it from a pleasant drink into a more effective delivery system for curcumin's benefits. Coconut water and mineral balance. Coconut water has no long history as a sleep aid. Its traditional use is as a refreshing beverage in tropical regions, valued for its electrolyte content and its ability to rehydrate quickly. Only recently have researchers begun to explore how its mineral profile might support sleep, particularly for those whose rest is disrupted by electrolyte imbalances. The potassium content of coconut water is its most notable feature. Potassium is essential for nerve signal transmission and muscle relaxation. Low potassium can cause muscle cramps, cardiac arrhythmias, and increased urinary frequency, all of which can disrupt sleep. Coconut water provides potassium in a form that is easily absorbed and well tolerated by most people. Coconut water also contains magnesium and small amounts of sodium. The magnesium supports GABA function and muscle relaxation. The sodium, in appropriate amounts, helps the body retain fluid rather than sending it immediately to the bladder. The combination makes coconut water a reasonable choice for those whose sleep is disrupted by muscle cramps, restless legs, or frequent urination. The key is using coconut water correctly. It should be diluted with warm water to reduce its sugar concentration and bring it to a comfortable temperature. It should be consumed in modest volume, at least an hour before bed. And it should be avoided entirely by those with kidney disease or potassium restrictions. Gelatin and bone broth. Perhaps the least expected entry on any list of sleep-supporting beverages is gelatin or bone broth. These are not traditionally thought of as bedtime drinks. Yet they contain glycine, which may be one of the most effective natural compounds for supporting deep sleep. Glycine's effects on sleep have been documented in multiple studies. Beyond the research already mentioned, glycine has been shown to improve subjective sleep quality in people with difficulty sleeping, reduce daytime sleepiness, and improve cognitive function following sleep. These effects appear to result from glycin's ability to lower core body temperature and increase slow-wave brain activity. Gelatin is essentially cooked collagen, and collagen is rich in glycin. When you dissolve gelatin in warm water and drink it, you are providing your body with a concentrated source of this amino acid. Bone broth, made by simmering bones for extended periods, also contains gelatin along with minerals extracted from the bones. The tradition of drinking bone broth for health has deep roots in many cultures. It was valued as a nourishing food for the sick, the elderly, and those recovering from illness or injury. Only recently have researchers begun to understand why the glycin, proline, and other amino acids in bone broth support tissue repair, immune function, and now, apparently, sleep. The principles that connect these beverages. Looking across these traditional beverages and the research that has followed them, certain principles emerge. These principles are not rules to be followed rigidly, but patterns to be understood and applied according to individual needs and circumstances. Principle 1. Nutrients matter more than volume. The first principle is that what a beverage contains matters more than how much of it you drink. Plain water provides hydration and nothing else. The beverages described here provide hydration plus compounds that actively support the body's evening transitions, minerals that stabilize nerve function, amino acids that facilitate sleep processes, phytochemicals that calm brain activity. This is why a small volume of a nutrient-rich beverage can be more effective for sleep than a larger volume of plain water. The beneficial compounds do their work while the fluid volume remains modest enough to avoid overwhelming the bladder. Quality replaces quantity as the primary consideration. Principle 2. The body uses evening hours for restoration. The second principle is that the evening and nighttime hours are not simply a pause in activity. They are an active period during which the body performs essential maintenance. Tissues are repaired. Waste products are cleared. Memories are consolidated. Hormones are balanced. Immune function is calibrated. This perspective shifts how we think about evening choices. The question is not simply whether a beverage will keep you from waking up. The question is whether it will support the restorative processes that occur during sleep. A beverage that helps you stay asleep is valuable. A beverage that also provides the raw materials for tissue repair, stress hormone regulation, or neurotransmitter production is more valuable still. Principle 3. Individual variation is real and relevant. The third principle is that no single beverage works equally well for everyone. Individual biochemistry, health status, medication use, and personal sensitivities all influence how the body responds to any given drink. One person may find that warm almond milk transforms their sleep. Another may notice no effect. A third may experience digestive discomfort. This is not a failure of the beverage or a sign that something is wrong with the person. It is simply the reality of biological variation. The appropriate response is observation and adjustment, trying different options, paying attention to results, and settling on what works for your unique body. Principle 4. Ritual and routine provide their own benefits. The fourth principle is that the ritual of preparing and consuming an evening beverage matters independently of what the beverage contains. The act of pausing, of warming a liquid, of sitting quietly and sipping slowly. These behaviors signal to the nervous system that the active part of the day has ended. They create a transition period between the stimulation of daytime and the stillness of night. This is why the specific temperature, timing, and manner of consumption matter. Drinking slowly, breathing evenly, and treating the experience as a moment of calm rather than a task to complete all reinforce the message that rest is approaching. The beverage becomes part of a larger evening routine that supports sleep through multiple channels. Beyond beverages, The larger context of evening choices. While beverages deserve attention, they operate within a larger context of evening choices that collectively determine sleep quality. Addressing beverage choice without considering this broader context would miss important opportunities for improvement. Light exposure and the circadian system. The human circadian system evolved in a world where darkness meant night and light meant day. The invention of artificial lighting has fundamentally altered this relationship, exposing the body to light at times when it expects darkness. This matters because light, particularly blue light, suppresses melatonin production, delaying sleep onset and potentially reducing sleep quality. In the hours before bed, reducing exposure to bright light and particularly to screens can support the body's natural melatonin production. This does not mean eliminating all evening light or avoiding screens entirely. It means being aware that light exposure affects sleep and making adjustments accordingly. Dimming lights in the hour before bed, using warm-toned lighting rather than cool white, and limiting screen time can all support the circadian system in doing what it naturally wants to do. Eating patterns and digestive demands. What and when you eat in the evening affects sleep through multiple mechanisms. Large meals close to bedtime require digestive work that can interfere with rest. Spicy or acidic foods can cause reflux when you lie down. High-sugar foods can spike blood glucose, leading to subsequent drops that may trigger awakening. The general principle is to allow sufficient time between the last substantial meal and bedtime, typically 2 to 3 hours, for initial digestion to occur. Evening snacks, if desired, should be modest and composed of foods that support rather than disrupt sleep. The beverages discussed here can serve as that evening snack, providing nutrients without overloading the digestive system. Physical activity and body temperature. Physical activity raises core body temperature, and the subsequent drop in temperature helps initiate sleep. This is why exercise earlier in the day can improve sleep. It creates a temperature cycle that supports the evening temperature drop. Vigorous exercise very close to bedtime, however, can raise temperature too close to sleep onset, potentially delaying the drop. The optimal timing varies by individual, but a general guideline is to complete vigorous exercise at least 3 hours before bed. Gentler activities like walking, gentle stretching, or yoga can be done closer to bedtime and may actually support relaxation. Mental activity and the winding down process. The brain needs time to transition from the high-stimulation activities of the day to the low-stimulation state of sleep. Jumping directly from work, news, or intense conversation into bed often leaves the brain still processing, still alert, still unable to settle. Creating a buffer period of 30 to 60 minutes between stimulating activities and sleep allows the brain to begin this transition. This buffer can include the evening beverage ritual, along with other calming activities, reading something undemanding, listening to quiet music, engaging in gentle conversation, practicing relaxation techniques. The specific activity matters less than the quality of the period. Low stimulation, low stress, low demand. The cumulative effect of small choices. One of the most important insights from longevity research is that small choices, repeated consistently over time, produce effects that far exceed what any single choice could achieve. This is true for diet, for physical activity, for social connection, and it is true for evening routines. Choosing a supportive beverage on any given night may produce a modest improvement in that night's sleep. Choosing a supportive beverage most nights, over months and years, may produce something more significant, a pattern of rest that consistently supports the body's repair processes, hormone regulation, and cognitive function. This is not about perfection. No one will maintain an ideal evening routine every night. Life intervenes. Special occasions occur. The goal is not to never deviate, but to establish a pattern that generally supports rather than undermines rest. The occasional glass of plain water before bed. The occasional late meal. The occasional night of poor sleep. These are not failures. They are simply part of being human. What matters is the overall pattern, the general direction, the cumulative effect of many small choices made over time. Listening to your body's signals. Throughout this exploration, a theme has emerged that deserves explicit attention. The importance of listening to your body. The body sends signals constantly: hunger, thirst, fatigue, discomfort, ease. In a culture that values productivity and external achievement, these internal signals are often ignored or overridden. We push through fatigue. We ignore thirst. We dismiss discomfort as unimportant. The body after 60 deserves a different approach. The signals it sends are not distractions from more important matters. They are information, valuable data about what it needs and how it is responding to the choices you make. When you wake at 2 in the morning after drinking plain water before bed, your body is not failing. It is telling you something about how it processes evening fluids. When you sleep more deeply after warm almond milk, your body is telling you something about what it needs to rest. Learning to hear and respond to these signals is a skill that develops with practice. It requires slowing down enough to notice. It requires curiosity about what works and what doesn't. It requires letting go of the idea that there is one right answer for everyone and accepting that your body's needs are unique to you. A broader view of longevity. The conversation about evening beverages may seem narrow, but it opens onto broader questions about how we approach the later years of life. The dominant cultural narrative about aging is one of decline, loss of function, loss of capacity, loss of vitality. This narrative shapes expectations and, to some extent, outcomes. People who expect decline may be less likely to make the small adjustments that could slow or moderate it. An alternative narrative is possible. In this alternative, aging is understood as a process of change that requires adaptation. The body at 70 is not the body at 40, and expecting it to function identically is unrealistic. But the body at 70 can be supported in ways that allow it to function well within its changed parameters. The goal is not to maintain youthful function indefinitely, but to optimize function at every age. This perspective shifts the focus from fighting aging to working with it. Instead of lamenting that you can no longer drink a glass of water before bed without waking, you explore beverages that work better for your current body. Instead of resigning yourself to poor sleep as inevitable, you experiment with approaches that might improve it. Instead of accepting fatigue as normal, you look for ways to support the restoration that makes fatigue unnecessary. The evening beverage is a small thing, but the approach it represents, observant, adaptive, respectful of the body's signals, is a large thing. It is a way of being in relationship with your own body that serves well across all the domains of health. Practical considerations for getting started. For those who find these ideas worth exploring, a practical approach might look something like this. Begin by observing your current patterns for a few nights. What do you typically drink in the evening? How close to bedtime do you drink it? How often do you wake during the night? How do you feel in the morning? This baseline observation provides a reference point for evaluating any changes you make. Choose one beverage to try first. Warm, unsweetened almond milk is a good starting point for many. It is widely available, easy to prepare, and generally well tolerated. Prepare approximately half a cup. Warm it gently, and drink it slowly about an hour before bed. Continue your usual evening routine afterward, including a final trip to the bathroom before sleeping. Observe what happens. Do you fall asleep more easily? Do you wake less often? Do you feel different in the morning? Give it several nights before drawing conclusions. One night's experience may not be representative. and it can take time for your body to adjust to a new pattern. If almond milk does not seem to help, try chamomile tea the following week. If chamomile does not produce results, try coconut water. Prepare it as described. Continue working through the options until you find what works for you. You may discover that one beverage consistently supports your sleep. You may find that rotating among several works best. You may find that none produce noticeable effects, in which case other aspects of your evening routine may deserve attention. Throughout this process, maintain realistic expectations. No beverage will transform poor sleep into perfect sleep overnight. The goal is modest improvement, falling asleep a little more easily, waking a little less often, feeling a little more refreshed. These modest improvements, sustained over time, can accumulate into meaningful differences in how you feel and function. When professional guidance is appropriate, while the beverages discussed here are generally safe and well tolerated, there are situations where professional guidance is appropriate. Those with kidney disease should avoid coconut water and other potassium-rich beverages without consulting their healthcare provider. Those on blood thinners should be aware that chamomile and turmeric have mild blood-thinning effects and should discuss significant changes with their doctor. Those with diabetes should choose unsweetened versions of all beverages and monitor their blood sugar response. More generally, anyone experiencing persistent sleep difficulties that interfere with daytime function should consider discussing them with a healthcare provider. Sleep problems can have many causes, some of which require medical attention. The beverages described here are tools that may support better sleep, but they are not treatments for sleep disorders. The quiet power of evening rituals. There is something almost countercultural about the idea of an evening ritual in a world that never stops. The pressure to be productive, to stay connected, to keep up extends late into the night for many people. Choosing to pause, to prepare a warm beverage, to sit quietly and sip slowly is a small act of resistance against that pressure. But it is also something more. It is an acknowledgement that rest matters, that the body needs time to transition, that the boundary between day and night deserves respect. The ritual of the evening beverage connects you to generations of people who understood this intuitively, who marked the end of the day with a warm cup and a quiet moment before sleep. That ritual can be simple: heating milk, steeping tea, stirring turmeric into warm liquid. It can be brief, 10 or 15 minutes from start to finish. But in that simplicity and brevity, it accomplishes something important. It signals to every system in your body that the active phase has ended and the restorative phase has begun. Conclusion: the years after 60 bring changes to every system of the body. Sleep changes. Fluid regulation changes. The nervous system changes. These changes are not failures. They are adaptations, the body's way of continuing to function despite the accumulated wear of decades. And like all adaptations, they can be supported by choices that work with rather than against them. The choice of what to drink in the evening is one such choice. Plain water, so essential during the day, often becomes problematic at night, filling the bladder and triggering awakening without providing anything that actively supports sleep. Other beverages: warm almond milk, chamomile tea, coconut water, golden milk, gelatin, or bone broth, offer hydration plus compounds that may help the body transition into rest, maintain sleep, and wake refreshed. These beverages are not magic. They are not treatments for sleep disorders. They are simply tools, options to try, observe, and evaluate based on your own body's responses. Some will work for you. Others will not. The process of discovering which ones support your sleep is itself valuable, training you to pay attention to your body's signals and adjust accordingly. In a culture that often treats aging as a problem to be solved or a decline to be accepted, this approach offers something different. It offers the possibility of working with your body rather than against it, of adapting to change rather than resisting it, of finding small ways to support the processes that keep you healthy and vital. The evening beverage is a small thing, but the orientation it represents, curious, observant, adaptive, is a large thing, one that serves well across all the domains of life. However you choose to approach your evenings, may they be calm, may your rest be restorative, and may you wake each morning to another day of this long, interesting, ever-changing life. The quiet truth that emerges from all of this is simple. The body after 60 is not the body at 40, and expecting it to respond the same way to the same choices is a recipe for frustration. But recognizing this is not an admission of decline. It is an invitation to wisdom, to the kind of knowing that comes only from paying attention, from observing how your own body responds, from making small adjustments based on what you learn. The evening beverage is a small thing, but the approach it represents, curious, observant, adaptive, is a large thing, one that serves well across every domain of life. As you go forward, we invite you to reflect on what you've heard here and to share your own observations in the comments. What have you noticed about your own evening patterns? What small adjustments have made a difference for you? Your experience may be exactly what someone else needs to hear. If this conversation has been valuable, you'll find more explorations of healthy aging throughout our library. Subscribe so you don't miss new wisdom as it arrives. Until next time, may your evenings be calm, your rest restorative, and your mornings bright. This is the Longevity Library. Listen, learn, and live longer.